Sure. Yeah, my name is Mark. I have two middle school kids, and that's about it. I don't have any other
Thank you.
involvement. I think my wife's coming also.
Okay, great.
Scott Lazenby, I have a senior in high school and a son that's in junior high.
Perfect. I'm loving this age group.
I'm Carrie Potter, and I have a soon-to-be 21-year-old who actually works as a paraprofessional at the McCall Donley preschool. And then I have a senior in high school. I have Pine Top and Rocky Mountain Crane, and in that capacity, we are financial backers for a lot of youth fundraisers, groups throughout the community.
Awesome. Meredith, you want to say any more about yourself?
I work in the planning department by normal day, and then on Mondays, Bessie Jo, the city clerk, and I decided that we needed to create an actual youth committee where the committee members are youth, so that they can advocate amongst themselves for their needs within the community and city. So each school year, we're starting up with Mondays so they can choose an after school once a month time period. And then they practice getting to know business owners through working on economic development and discount programs in the community for young people, and try to advertise job opportunities. And then the other topic that came up as they started up was that youth want more resources for mental health, and they just want to learn how to navigate that whole system and advocate for themselves for the most part. But it's really, they drive the bus in the direction that if they have a need that's not being met, we try and go find those things and use city resources and all of the different things we can compile together to get them where they need to go. So they really chart their own destiny year by year. And if they don't choose the same topics this year, they could end up saying, I want to learn how to build a tiny house. And I'll say, well, maybe we should call Carrie. Because that sounds like something I'm not capable of telling you how to do. But
They did that in New Meadows a couple years back, didn't they? Yeah.
They did.
Well, and at the high school they do.
They do it there too.
Sheds, but.
Sorry, I interrupted. My bad.
So that's kind of what I'm here for. I think that the youth council is one puzzle piece to a greater puzzle. As for example, like I can't give them medical advice. I can't give them legal advice. I can't tell them to go tell someone to stick it to the man or anything like that. But they're really trying to connect the local government with what the kids are saying so that we at least hear them like we hear everyone else.
And you're also here today representing Youth Council, right? You already spoke to them about some of their concerns. You can talk about that, right? And hi.
I was looking for where it was.
Oh, sorry about that. I should have put better signs up. I'm Erin. What's your name?
I'm Sonia.
Sonia.
I'm Jabez.
And you can introduce yourself right after Molly, so I'll give you time to prep.
Oh.
Did you want to add anything, Molly?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, I just want to add that I'm also a mom too. And I have older kids too, but I have a freshman in high school. So I'm also a parent. And just tell us your name and if you want to share anything about yourself.
Okay, I'm Sonia, and this is my husband, Mark. And we have two kids in middle school, two boys. And we've lived in McCall about 4 years now.
Brilliant.
And we love it, and it's a great place to raise a family. So.
Awesome. Well, so I spoke a little bit earlier about the goals of focus groups for the city, but I want to talk just really quickly about the youth itself. So my goal here today too is to also highlight opportunities because we run 13 departments, right? So we've got your McCall Police Department, which may or may not affect some of your needs or wants or concerns. We have the library. We offer the Parks and Recreation Department. So our Recreation Department, one thing I always thought was very interesting is our Recreation Department does concentrate on very young youth, which I think is very cool that we have some older kids' parents here. I had to watch that for a minute. So I had a little opener about, I call it opening in the style of Lyle. Do you guys know Lyle Nelson? Okay. Lyle Nelson's famous for when I think of a tree, I think the word whatever. So I just want to kind of read the room a little bit and see what your guys, what your words are. So let's start with Sonia. When you think of youth resources in the community, is there a word that comes to mind?
Outdoor activities, sports, and a rec center.
Okay. We're getting where we need to be. Mark, do you have anything?
I think it's pretty, how do I say that they're integrated well? Oh shoot, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I have to go. I got a work call.
Okay.
like it's very well into, like all the kids seem to be pretty well integrated with each other.
Like it.
Excuse me, I apologize.
No worries. I hope everything's okay for you.
Hey, John, what's up?
I think of like opportunity more for kids. I mean, my kids are 4 years apart in age, but I think there's just kind of some limited opportunities in the city for them as far as when they get into adulthood and what their goals are, for opportunities. So my background, I was a fire captain down in Long Beach for 23 years, and throughout high school, I grew up into like the Explorer program. So you talk about the police department and the fire department local. I think it'd be great to have possible opportunities for that, for kids to look at, serving their community once they graduate high school, whether they want to get into the fire service or police department, forest service, those things.
And so I should clear that, remembering that the fire department is its own district, but we do work very closely with the fire department here. I'm sure you know that. But yeah, I can actually update Garrett on anything we talk about today as well. Carrie, what's your word or words?
One word, when it relates to resources, community. With the close-knit community, I think that if anyone has a need, that need is fulfilled. And I think everyone's willing to step up and pay the piper, per se, for our community, and especially our youth.
Thank you. Let's skip to Melissa. You can introduce yourself really quick for anybody who doesn't know who you are, and then we're doing one word when we think about community resources for youth.
My name's Melissa Coriel, and I work with Meredith on the McCall Youth Council and then teach at the high school. Mental health.
Thanks. And Laura?
I was gonna say basically the same thing. Especially last year, I think it really got highlighted. I think that, and I think, I agree there's a lot of sports opportunities, but there's not a ton of opportunities outside of that, sometimes different, like there's a lot of outdoor opportunities. So, I like the idea of a rec center, but like I would see it being broader than that to be able to offer different types of programming and things so I think we have a gap and there's a group of kids that aren't being served.
Meredith, did you have a word?
In the most positive way possible, I look at our youth that I work with in like the high school level is overcommitted. And that they're trying to get
My
into
daughter would
everything
so agree with you.
such that I feel like they don't know how to give themselves time to breathe or space to breathe. Like that's just the big thing I've noticed with them is they'll say yes to everything. And then I'm like, wait, before you say yes to this thing, do you have the time for it? So it's impressive and I admire it so much. But I'm like, take a minute.
Yeah, I mean, Molly, did you have a word? Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, the first thing that comes to my mind is opportunities outside of technology. I mean, I don't know. I kind of just, I would love to see more opportunities outside. Obviously, outside opportunities are great, but I would love to see more opportunities for them to stimulate their creative mind. I know Carrie and I have had kids involved in our drama programs and Laura as well. And we've seen great things from that, but I think there's more than even just that we could explore. So, yeah. So thanks for that. I think it is a great tool. And if you ever watch a council meeting, Lyle really nails it on the words. So he's really great at it. So the first question I had, just kind of wanting to hear where you guys are is, what are we missing? So I'm going to start with Laura here because she already outlined what we're missing. And we are recording this today. Keep that in mind, but it is really for internal use. Of course, keep in mind, we're a public agency. If somebody requires and requests it, we will provide it. But for the most part, it's meant to be so we can go back and note take and we can make sure we provide accurate information to City Council. So Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about what you think we're missing as far as a resource?
And this also is kind of informed by, I've been going to the Planet Youth by YAC meetings and we have data from the kids. And so they said and I felt this way too previously. They said that there's like a lack of social, like we don't, growing, when I was little and I would come here, there was a bowling alley and there was, there were places to go. And I mean, they can go to each other's houses but we don't have like those spaces, for them to go that aren't like sports or, and it's kind of to what Meredith was saying, what kids need is little kids need unstructured play, and kids like my kids' age, they really need some unstructured time, like where they're not like in a youth council meeting or in a soccer practice or in like when it goes in, when they're in the plays and it's like 3 hours every single day, like, that's a lot for them, plus getting their work done. So having that like free time and having like a place to gather, and in the summer, there's tons of places to gather. They're down at the beach and everything, but then, I think it is a little harder in the winter for those that don't maybe enjoy whatever. So I feel like that.
I'm talking about a rec center.
Like a rec center, or even things that aren't necessarily like a government thing. I mean, like we used to have a bowling alley. There was the Yellow Couch. Now Ignite Idaho has started kind of like a small teen center idea, but it's open very limited hours and it's in a place that's not obvious to kids and they don't know about it. So I think people are trying to, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be. I think that actually the expanded library will have enough space that there will be spaces for little kids, spaces for other kids, so that could fill a gap for a few, kids who like what's there, like whether it's the maker space, there's going to be a group of kids who like to go to that maker space. That's going to fill the need for them, but maybe not for other kids. So I don't think like necessarily one place can be like the end all be all for everyone, but I do think that that's something. And especially, and like there are these overcommitted kids, but there's a lot of kids at the high school who don't have any activities, who don't participate in things, and because maybe they're not into drama and they're not into sports, and then so I think there's some really good resources for certain activities, and then there's some kids who they don't have that, or like if you want to participate in hockey or skiing or it's pretty expensive. So, and we try to like Carrie and I both have helped with stuff, like trying to do scholarships or trying to help with Little Ski Hill, but I think there are still gaps for some of the kids, and transportation's also huge for that. Like if you do build a rec center, how are the kids from Donley going to get there? Because the school bus rules, with the federal rules, the school bus can't take them from Donley to McCall. It's not allowed. So there's other issues surrounding that. That is what I was told. That is why.
No, yeah, I'm
Donnelly
making notes
kids
for opportunities
can't
later.
go to after school programming. So Little Ski Hill's one of the only
Interesting.
groups that's tried to overcome that. And it's difficult to get drivers and stuff for that now. So even if you build a rec center, like there's still going to be other issues.
So let's keep going around the room on that same topic. So we just heard from Laura on what we think we're missing as far as programs or resources. You mentioned a little bit as well, but let's just keep going around the room. Sonia, do you want to add anything that you can think of that we might be missing that's top of mind for you?
That's my main desire, is to have a rec center where, kids can go when the winters are pretty long here. We need an indoor space where they can go just have free time, basketball, I think an Olympic-sized swimming pool, so the kids who, don't have to drive to Cascade to be on the swim team, or don't have to share the elementary school and the middle school in the winter for the baseball and soccer teams that use that space during our shoulder seasons quite a bit. I just think big gyms and open spaces indoors is something that would be awesome.
We'll keep going around the room. Did you have a chance to voice that during the pros plan research process?
This is my first.
Okay, so when we just did our Parks and Recreation open spaces plan, there's actually a pretty cool diagram and outline and concept for it. So I'll turn you on to that when we're done. Mark, did you want to add anything that you think we're missing or resources or programs you'd like to see? I know you said you have middle schoolers.
No, no.
Okay. Scott, you had mentioned before, like opportunities, like I was thinking ROTC or, cadets and things like that. Did you have any other things you wanted to add as far as like community resources we might be missing?
No, I'm much on board with that. I've been up here for 9 years, so a better part of my kids growing up, going through the elementary and junior high and now into high school. And I do feel there is a big need for that.
Has it gotten better or worse if you've watched it go for a while?
I would say it's pretty much plateaued. It hasn't really done a whole lot. I mean, there's other things that obviously Little Ski Hill, my daughter's too old for that now, but my son is in that age group or category. So I make that trek to Little Ski Hill, and that's a great after school program or opportunity to eat up some of that time instead of just sitting around and being on games or so on and so forth. And like you said, during the summer, they're at the lake, but I will definitely agree with them as far as shoulder season or during winter, if they're not in a ski program, that there's little opportunity for some sports that are offered in other areas or parks, especially like swimming.
We'll go back to Carrie. I'm going to skip staff quick and go to Melissa. Did you have anything that pokes out to you as far as resources or things we're missing that are highlighted?
I guess I was thinking, not so much like a rec center I think is nice. I think that's important, but I'm also thinking about, we have like access. So what I notice is we have so many incredible resources already, like Ponderosa State Park, Lick Creek Road. We have all these natural spaces that I just feel like we need ways to get those kids out there. And I think that's what so that with getting them into nature, they live in it, but they don't necessarily get to experience it because they either work a ton, they don't have the resource, they don't even have the motivation or the wherewithal, or just they don't have the resources. They're just trying to survive, so many of these kids. Mm-hmm. And so getting them access and in a routine where like they feel empowered to go hiking, you have things that are free or relatively cheap, but they feel like they can go explore and do those things. So I would say getting those kids connected to the outdoors. And then I think so mentorship, more of that kind of opportunity for kids. Creative spaces. I liked the idea of just having a place to go, which I think the library is going to provide that. So that could be, to me, like a hub where kids can kind of maybe get resources that they need. Yeah, there is a dedicated teen center in the new library. So it's supposed to be awesome. Great. So we'll see what happens. Meaningful like mentorship. I don't know, and then just advocacy. Like there's so many and I guess that's what we're hoping to do, but getting them feel like they can be a voice in their community and in the state to like make changes that they are being impacted by. And so like giving them an opportunity to have a voice in their government, have a voice in the decisions that are being made for them. So I really want teens to feel empowered. Okay. Carrie, are you ready to answer that question? What's missing? You don't have to, you can skip her.
Yes. So my thought was the rec center. And then that just brings about a caveat of issues, funding for the rec center, transportation there, other resources for the community, low-income housing. I mean, it's a snowball. So we have so many issues, and we just need to start with the biggest issue and then grow from there. I guess that depends on your perspective what the biggest issue is. Maybe that's another focus group. Okay. Okay, Meredith, you're representing youth right now when I ask you this question. What did you hear from your youth about what was missing or programs or resources?
They have specifically resoundingly requested more bike racks in the downtown area near beaches and parks. because they all don't have driver's license yet. Youth council, and they're like, I need to park my bike somewhere it won't get stolen.
Okay, noted.
Can I kind of piggyback off
Yeah.
that for a second? The one thing that, so you're talking about spaces to like do things. The one thing that really bothers me is the lack of access to those places, like safe access, right? So like sidewalks, bike paths, things like, especially in the winter. I mean, the golf course is phenomenal, but like, I don't feel comfortable sending my kids on their bikes down to the lake because I know that they're going to either have to ride on Woolley or they're going to have to ride on 3rd Street. At some point, there's just not a safe mode of transportation for them to take themselves to those places.
Thank you. That's great feedback too. So I guess I want to ask really quick. So what I'm hearing is third spaces. So I did a lot of article reading about third spaces. It's something that people talk about a lot. In fact, Starbucks was actually created on the concept of the third space, the idea that's not home, not the office, not school, right? So what is that third space for your kids? And so their office is their school, right? For us, it would be at the office. And I also think that I look at my son just to share, and I think if they don't have that third space, that rec center, that library, that teen center, where do they end up? Well, my son comes home smelling like fried chicken from being on the top of Ridley's, or he hangs out at Starbucks with some of his friends right after football practice or something like that. So they do tend to find places. And so as a parent, I also think sometimes we want to choose where our kids have their third spaces, right? And to make sure it's safe and they have a safe access and they can get there in a way that allows us to feel like they're cared for and safe as well. So I guess the next question I have is, where do you think kids are finding these resources now, or parents are finding these resources now? Because this came up because Molly and I were brainstorming a new page that we're drafting, which are on the page. You can take them with you, look at them later. The idea is kind of a one-stop shop for every possible type of resource you might need. Is it a food bank? Is it a teen center? Is it, support, counseling, all in one place? And we realized, who goes to the city's website to look at that, right? So then I thought, well, where are they finding out? So do you guys have any feedback on that? Where are you as a parent or your kids finding these resources? Where would you like to find these resources? Anybody want to answer that or start there?
I think a lot of it's word of mouth.
Mhm.
I mean,
Okay.
like, you hear about it from other kids. Oh, that kid's doing that cool thing. So I want to.
Okay, maybe you want to post something in those third spaces. Starbucks, Ridley's, the skate park.
Fried chicken bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think most of it, like she's saying, word of mouth, or at school, where they get that information.
Do you guys read the stuff they sent home from school?
My kids stopped bringing stuff home from school.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, they're in high school. Like, I used to get stuff home from school. I don't get anything now. And then I know that the school district was like developing, like last year I did put the app on my phone and stuff, but it didn't.
Text messages.
It didn't have, the school text messages are helpful for school stuff, but it's not, like when they were in elementary school, I felt like stuff got sent home that was not necessarily from the school, but like that, that no longer happens.
It seems like there was a stop, right, once they get to high school, where they stop getting third-party advertisements, if you will. Like it used to be, like we get all these crazy things home from our kids, and now when they get into high school, we get less of that. Maybe they're not bringing it, but I also think they're also posting it on the website, and it's sort of our responsibility to go check it out at the high school app or on the high school site. I know I didn't even know homecoming was coming unless I went and looked at the calendar to find out. Anybody else want to mention where they might have gotten their information about resources?
Well, I'm just curious. So you have to do the work, right, to find all these things. Is there an email list that just like monthly sends out like a activities newsletter, like a City of McCall activity newsletter?
So actually, funny question. So we used to do a newsletter. Not necessarily that highlighted all of those particular things, but they could. What we found when we stopped doing the newsletter a few years back is I had a really small open rate. People were not opening our emails. And so we stopped sending them, and guess what? No one ever asked about them. But what we did do was we started investing a lot of our time and effort in text messaging and mobile communications, and we're slowly growing that list. And that's enabling us to maybe start launching that newsletter again, because now we can send a text reminder that says, hey, these are the topics, click here and go check it out. So thank you for bringing that up. It is something we've been thinking about. We are starting a business newsletter with the clerk's office for sure. But we don't do it. Chamber puts out one that's pretty comprehensive. There are a lot of like McCall Arts and Humanities puts one out. So a lot of times it matters who you're linked up with and where you're getting your information from. But that's a great one. So you do think it would be an email list would be something that you might think is interesting?
Well, yeah, just kind of like a breakdown of like what's coming up in the next month or two, like for example, like finding out like the information on that water slide that was going down into the lake
Yeah.
was like so confusing. It's like, is it going on? Is it not going on? How do you find it? Oh, well, you hop on the city's website. And then it was like, click, 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 click. Oh, no, that's not the right site. Anyway, just be like, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think what would help with that is an all-inclusive calendar.
Yeah.
So you have every community event, every city council event, every planning and zoning event, and it's a massive calendar that is just published.
Yeah, I agree. McCall Parks and Recreation currently uses a third-party website called that they call McCallRec.com, which is through another server. They do that because they like the opportunity to show the stats of the youth teams. And I have heard that that is not a priority for maybe the parents. They'd rather hear what's going on than worry about like the actual stats of the youth. So we are looking to transfer our current web builder into a new web content provider, which will enable us to do that. Right now, we have two calendars. Molly, can you pop up the homepage? Right now, we have two calendars. We have the meetings calendar, which is on the right, which shows anything that's official meetings that's open to the public. And then on the left-hand side, we have city happenings. Right now, the only department I have that's taking advantage of city happenings is the library. Our goal would be to have the rec department be utilizing that as well.
Looks like you have one rec.
And good stuff. So it looks like maybe they started doing it. Hard to say.
And how much in advance is that public?
Yeah, so
Because
that's ongoing all the time. And as far as the public meetings, those are updated months in advance. The city happenings for the library are done monthly. They go along with the actual library newsletter that is sent out, by the way. So the library list does exist. And so that comes through our offices and that is published. Rec used to do their own. They got out of the habit as well.
All the rec stuff.
So it looks like she's putting them on there for that youth portion. Downside is we talk about opportunities and our youth programming concentrates on kids that are not in your middle school and high school. The idea there is that the majority of those kids have opportunities through the school outdoors, through their sports programs. So that's definitely a conversation to have, right? But we also would be cool, like Carrie said, what if we started reaching out and opened our calendar up for people to put stuff on our city calendar? For example, the chamber events, the McCall Arts and Humanities, Planet Youth, whoever wants to add things in and create a calendar where people can have a sign on and actually put activities up there so everybody can see things in one place. So that's an awesome idea.
Channel 7 actually used to do that.
Yeah.
Down in the valley.
And Boise,
And they would put stuff up on TV.
does Boise Public Radio still do it too? I don't remember. Okay, so moving right along. I'm getting there. I'm on sketch. We talked about the challenges. We kind of covered that. We don't need to redo that. When we talk about, opportunities. So I wrote down a couple ideas just to get things going, but we talked about transportation. So let's move into that a little bit. You were saying that the kids can't be transported.
So most of the money that runs the school busing program is federal money.
Okay.
Under that federal money, technically, kids are just supposed to be transported home. So when kids from Donnelly are like, I want to do this after-school program, that's in McCall, they say no. Occasionally, they will take them as far as Harlow's and then let their parents come get them at Harlow's. But like for people who are working all day to take off at, tell your boss like, oh, it's 3:00. I got to go either get my, and like Harlow's, they wouldn't allow that for like every kid. So I mean, this is like what the Donley parents, I mean, I wound up not using bus service because it was so inconvenient for my family because I had to drive my kids 2 miles to get to the bus stop. So this is like based on what other parents said, but I did, I did ask about this, like, why can't we get Donnelly kids up to McCall for an after-school program or something? And I was told that it was because of that barrier. So like Little Ski Hill contracts separately, they use Harlow's, but the school isn't funding that. So if we want to get kids from Donnelly, because the McCall kids, they're at least already in town. So like, then they have PLCA or they have, their sports teams, whatever, if it's meeting in McCall, they're right here. So there was and some kids, I mean, there are people using the public buses. And I know the new charter school is using the public buses to a certain degree, like they get kids to Donnelly and then they get on the public bus to go back down to Cascade. But the schedule of that public bus is somewhat limited. And there's safety issues. I mean, there are some issues with that. I mean, I actually had to ride the public bus to school when I was a kid because we went to Catholic school for a bit, and they didn't have buses. So I think it could be safe for kids to go, but it's not. It's not a kind of a normal thing.
So that's what I was getting at when I was thinking about Mark's comment, was I was thinking about the public bus system, because now we have the Gold Line that goes to New Meadows and comes back. Granted, there are issues there as far as there are challenges with drivers, but we also, of course, have our Red Line, which is free to ride. And some of the kids do take advantage of that. So that Red Line that runs, yes, it has pretty much everything though is walkable. All of our bus stops are walkable to wherever you might want to be. There's a bus stop that you can be walkable to Ponderosa State Park. There's a bus where you can be walkable to the library. So that Red Line is something I think could be a really interesting thing to start promoting to the kids, to say, hey, you guys, you should be riding the public bus. It is free. You can put your bike on it. There's a bike rack. Like, there's an opportunity there. Then I think about the Green Line that stops in Donnelly and goes down to Cascade. And the problems we run into with that are timing, right? They don't necessarily have drivers that run at night. So if the kids all want to go down to, say, Cascade and see a movie, there's no way for them to get back if they're riding the public bus system. And so one thing that comes to mind for me, like taking my city hat off, is to say, well, if we could find a way to support funding for additional drivers or night driving, which I know some people have really been interested in, honestly, just to cut down on DUIs, would be to get, night driving for our public bus system so that these kids could actually spread their wings and go out and do things safely. But I do think that the intercity as well, using that public bus line. And then a lot of people don't know that the Blue Line that runs all summer long runs from Memorial Day to Labor Day, I believe. That's a flag down service that runs all the way from Super 8 all the way down to Pueblo Lindo and comes all the way back and can be flagged down and picked up from anywhere, and they'll drop you off anywhere, and it's completely free as well. So again, another resource that we're probably just, because it's not a city, it's not a city bus, but we do fund it, portion of it. But we could do a better job explaining, I think, how our public transportation system works and take advantage. You all said you hear it through the schools and word of mouth, to do a better job. That could be a cool one for the city, for the youth council, to get the kids riding the buses. So does anyone want to add to that? We talked about transportation. Are there any other main topics that you really want to talk about to make sure your kids going to get around these third spaces that we may or may not be able to create? Any ideas there?
My son on that red bus all the time when
Do you?
Yeah.
I like,
Every hour on the hour. And I'll usually, if it goes past my house, I look at the clock, I'm like, well, you got 20 minutes, and he'll flag them down and right out in front of the house. But don't have to necessarily go to a bus station if they're passing by. So.
Interesting. I was going to ask you a question about Harlow's. So when back in my previous life with PLCA, I'm still on that board, but we used to rent Harlow's buses for events and activities. And they would take our kids to, I don't know, the hatchery as a field trip, and then they would bring us back and we would contract them separately. I would think that if a group like Planet Youth or Yak or somebody created a private contract with Harlow's outside of the federal dollar and you could fundraise for that, that could be an opportunity if you had a set schedule to get them to and from.
Yeah, no, and I know last year Little Ski Hill ran into problems with like the
Drivers.
staffing. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, yeah.
Private events that just got canceled because they
Good.
didn't have drivers.
But I also liked Mark's comments about safe pathways.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
And I know like one big hurdle to that has been it's a state highway, so we can't, you know, put sidewalks on 3rd Street. And I know that there's like now the conversation about swapping. So maybe that would be an opportunity, but I think there are a couple places in town where it would really be nice to have, especially in the winter. It gets like, I see kids walking to school when I was driving my kids to school. Thankfully now they can drive themselves, but I would see people walking to school in the snow on 3rd Street and it like scares me because it's just really seems not safe. And also it's, you know, like it's wet and dirty and everything. And so like, I really appreciate the path around the high school in the winter because it's kept clean and separate from the street. So you're not, you know, gonna get sprayed on. So it'd be nice to have more of that.
Okay. So along 3rd Street's the main objective, right?
Well, I mean, it's just not, there's nothing cohesive, right? So like if you take the bike path down Spring Mountain, like it all drops you off on like a place where there's no real shoulder on the side of the road or like Boyd's like past the fire station, you know, like you can get to somewhere you're like walking alongside of major traffic.
Yeah.
You know, and there's not something that continuously will take you safely from one place to a destination point. You have to kind of piecemeal it all together.
Yeah. Well, Laura was definitely right. I mean, the road swap between Boydston and our downtown Lake Street and 3rd Street, that swap will open up a lot of opportunities for the future of pathway systems. And so we're really excited about that. It also opens up opportunities for more safety places. Like people are always like, how come you can't put a proper crosswalk with a flashing light on Lenora, you know, and we can't because we don't own that. So the state does not allow us to intervene there. So we are looking at all of those options. We sort of just have to wait it out, but we have got, I think where we're at right now is there's a grant for the design of that, correct, Meredith, in community development? Yeah, so we're getting closer and closer. I still think we're a few years out. So in the meantime, we probably do need to like think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, and it became a main goal in the pros plan, I think, to close the gaps on at least in between Boydston and town central paths. Because there are some major transmission lines on the pathways that they're just down to the last gap. And I think we're getting to the point where typically if there's new development in planning world, we require the installation of whatever pathway is missing along frontage or whatever. But I think we're getting to the point where we need those pathways and the development is not coming. So it's a matter of finding the funding within the community to get the pathways done and then go from there.
I would add, though, that the exciting one we heard recently was that we did actually get funded for Mission Street, and that's happening in 2024. And I get a lot of phone calls about Mission Street. So that is actually going to have a proper pathway and bike system associated with it. So that's a win.
It's huge.
I'd like to highlight the wins.
A lot of gaps kind of dovetail off of his. There's kind of a lot of gaps. You take, obviously, and it's a great pathway from the creek all the way, you know, clear up to the schools. And then if you're going to transition across, you're going to take Woolley Bridge Path. And then there's this large gap. And then you pick it up on the other side. Yeah. And it's like that. It's just kind of spotty everywhere. And like you said, if you have younger kids, you're trying to navigate through your head of how to get downtown safely. Obviously, the city's a complete disaster with road construction right now anyway, so that's a total different subject. So I'll just leave that one alone.
Great summer for everyone. Awesome. Yes, awesome. We agree. The good news is, though, all those things means improvement, right? We have a really short window of construction season, unfortunately. And so that means we have to push as much into a really small window as we can. And unfortunately, that means us navigating that for a minute. But just think how great it's going to look in 2 years.
Yeah, I was waiting for the ferry to start picking up at Ponderosa and take them downtown. Might be the best. Everything.
Yes, well, we appreciate your patience. We're hopefully getting there. Carrie, do you have anything to add? Transportation pathways, we heard about bus lines.
I haven't heard anything about Lyft or Uber.
Oh, love, yes.
Yeah, take the drums home. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, well, so taxi services are available in the city limits. No one has signed up. I think we have a person signed up who doesn't do it.
Yeah.
That's accurate. Prompt has a taxi service, but we actually have an Uber person signed up that doesn't drive.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
but
ridden with John. I've ridden with Chris in the pedicab.
But they don't do it.
Super fun.
That's
Like
cool.
they drove elsewhere in their life and they existed. But we've been looking at different versions of, they call it micro, in terms of people being able to borrow a bike if they don't have a bike and being able to use that, or maybe creating with the transit service an on-demand bus that's separate from the lines. If there's consistent direction they're going, they can add down in the valley. They have these ACHD buses where people can call the service. They'll come and pick them up within 10 to 15 minutes from the van. And then they go to where they're trying to go, either to the rest of the transmission line or somewhere else to get to the last mile. So in terms of Uber and Lyft, we've been looking into whether that becomes a formula business conflict, and we don't think so, because it's not like a retail store. So we don't think that it's going to come up against any regulation barriers or anything like that. So it's just a matter of, does somebody want to do it?
Well, it makes me wonder why John, right? So he's been around forever. Prompt's been running forever. Why hasn't he capitalized on this other opportunity of running all the time, not just at night? And it makes me wonder, is there not an opportunity for it? Or does he not have the manpower? Does
Might make
he
more money.
I think you make a lot
just
more
in the
money at night.
evening? So it's financial. Okay, interesting.
What I've seen from the fees on it is that people won't even cover the cost of gasoline with the shortness of rides. Like you have to have at least a 10-mile ride or 30-minute ride to cover the cost of maintenance and gasoline that you're putting in the vehicle after covering your insurance policy and this and that and the other. And then they don't really make that much of a wage. So does that mean that we should encourage people to just have an independent ride-share taxi service?
Well, and so with the rise of e-bikes, have you guys noticed? So one of the biggest things we had this summer was e-bike complaints all summer long, because we have a ton of kids in town who all got e-bikes gifted and they're not wearing helmets. They're not using the speed limit as a guide. They're really being reckless. And so we had kids almost being hit and parents complaining. And so have you guys had any issues with kids and e-bikes? And I'm glad it's winter and they can't use them.
Yeah,
It's like a
just
game
like
that
kids.
goes through our neighborhood.
It's also.
It's not just.
It's not just kids. No, it's not. You're right.
The worst offenders that I saw were adults, quite frankly.
It's a double-edged sword. We want there to be, less use on fossil fuels. We want there to be easier ways for our kids to get around, but then we also want them to do it safely. And there's no rules that they have to wear a helmet, and there's no rules that they have to, technically there are rules they're supposed to do with the speed limit, but they don't. So that's interesting to me. Do we think we're going to see them in the winter?
Yes. So they work.
Those fat bikes,
Where
Maybe.
they're a thing.
Well, isn't that for McCall PD and code enforcement?
So we've talked about it. Yeah. And
They have to follow the same rules bikes do.
we don't, well, yes and no, because there's certain parameters. I think that there's parameters having to do with how fast the bikes can go, and there's different stages of e-bikes. And so we've been talking about it in department head, like, okay, how do we attack this? We actually also don't have a current code in reference to our pathway systems for e-bikes. So we've got people zooming down pathways on these e-bikes, right? So I don't want to get off topic with that, but it made me think of transportation and youth. Melissa,
Yes.
mental health. What are the opportunities that we can capitalize on for mental health? Because that was your word.
Well, yeah, just because we had our youth council meeting on lunch, and we were talking about one thing, and suddenly, Meredith said, well, we're going to have this meeting on Tuesday. Gosh, Monday was just, okay, it was just yesterday.
Same.
And the students kind of, first everybody was quiet and then somebody said, well, we need more bike racks, but then it just spiraled into mental health, like
They
everything.
brought up very bluntly
Yeah.
the events of last
They
year.
did.
And mostly feeling as though the system, be it the school system or the community system or whatever it was, not being prepared to steward the grief process to them.
So you're referring to the suicides last year.
And then the 8th grader in the car accident in the tree.
Yep.
And they felt that there was so much tiptoeing, trying not to do or say anything wrong, that there was never any actual moment where they were talked through what they were supposed to feel or how to cope with it. And so they were very hardened by those chain reaction experiences and kind of bitter about it, which I don't like seeing a teenager like that, or a barely teenager who's just entering high school and it's their first month, 2 weeks of high school. And they're like, my friend passed away 4 months ago and no one told me what to do. I was like,
Right. And so when they said they brought counselors into the school, was that a short-lived process?
They described it as they were discouraged to go unless they were actively crying. So they were like, well, I'm not actively crying, so I'm not eligible to go talk to the counselor.
Well, and I heard, from my own child, I said, oh, they still had the counselors this week. And she said, oh, they told us they weren't there. And she was very close to the one at the high school. And then I think the timing of the other one, who was also happened just to be my cousin. So weirdly, we were really close to both of those. That happened it was the second to last day of school. So I think I heard that the middle school did a really good job on the last day of school of allowing the kids to, but I recently sent a thing on to Ignite Idaho because they do offer some crisis counseling. There's a long wait list for counseling services right now in our community. So Ignite Idaho is trying to sort of fill a gap there by kind of having some counselors hold spots for emergencies and for kids who can't pay and things like that. So I just recently forwarded a thing to them from the Children's Home Society in Boise, that the Children's Home Society in Boise is doing a monthly grief group. And it was really their outreach about it was very I was like, oh, this looks amazing. It's really too bad we didn't have something like this last year. And so Ignite was they were very interested in maybe trying to put something together like that, where they could do it in response if something happens, but also even for those kids who I think still don't feel like they've gotten through the grief from those two things, offering that to them. So I feel people in the community want to help, but that's how, we don't have a lot of capacity in that system to do more.
It probably isn't, I don't know that's really the city's wheelhouse. It's more or less probably on the school district side of it. But my own personal experience being in the fire department, we had coworkers that were trained in CISD. And obviously this is almost a weekly incident that would occur and bring in people. But I'm sure there'd be plenty of parents that would volunteer to go through, probably a 2 to 3 day critical incident stress debriefing class or seminar so that they have the skills and the training to be able to respond to something like that. And God forbid if it's something large, even in a smaller scale like we've had here with students that parents could come in as counselors or grief counselors and be there and kind of an advocate to consider.
This makes me think of, somebody help me, the CARE Network. There's something that I've helped Garrett advertise that they do.
There's something with the Youth Coalition group right now that they're doing, the HOPE program.
That's what I was
So Hope Squad is going to be a curriculum that is provided facilitated by YAC, and it's going to actually be in all of the schools, like even the elementary schools. It is specifically a suicide prevention program. So it's not, so I mean, it has elements of it that could deal with, dealing with the situation after, but the goal of it is to prevent. And it has, different things for the different ages. And my understanding is that every school has signed on.
Great.
So that is
That's
something
awesome.
that will be helping. And then I do think there's I think there's some unresolved grief that it would be good to make sure that those.
Yeah, the
kids-
preparation is great. It's
So sorry, you guys. Apologies.
the post, that we're all dealing with.
So I think it's called TIPS, but Valley County has a program and it's sponsored up through the state level where, because I thought about signing up because they're available 24 hours a day, and most of the time they're brought in for major incident, fire, obviously, death. So our police department will bring in one of these care providers, and they're supposed to be within a 20-mile radius, and then they come on site with the family, and they're trained to be there as an assistant. I think it'll be through the fire department. And they're trained there to not only provide, but also help them coordinate resources if they've lost things or if they need counseling, and helps them find things.
Red Cross.
It's like the Red Cross. But my thought is, if talking to Garrett, if there's an opportunity for parents to take that same TIPS program, which is outside that HOPE network for suicide prevention, but is there for when incidents like this happen, like you said, maybe this infrastructure is already in place and we could just talk about expanding it and then offering it to the schools as a resource. So that's just my brain, and it's recorded now.
I speak for myself, and maybe Carrie, but I think there's a lot of parents that feel obviously they want to be there for the kids, and they want to be either involved or be a grief counselor because, when they do come home, there's obviously that's happening inside your own residence. But I think there's kind of like that, imaginary threshold where, well, I'm a parent, but I can't necessarily go there and volunteer my services or be a grief counselor because I haven't been signed off or,
Right.
I'm sure there'd be plenty of parents that would sign up to do that. And it would be a simple text to X amount of parents that would be willing to respond and say, hey, this is our group and at least I can only speak for our department that we did a annual, training, and they would obviously bring in, rookies or newcomers that would want to volunteer, or there was some guys that were just like, hey, I've done this for 20 years. I'm done. I'm spent. I'm burned out. So it's obviously a constant, rotation of bringing new people in, new training, or what's new and available.
That's a great idea. That's a wonderful idea.
I'm not spearheading it.
I always say that best ideas come from people who want to start them.
And some of them even talked about wanting preventative maintenance is what I described back at them. Was they're like, I want to know how to ask to talk to somebody that isn't my mom and dad about my problems so that I can figure out if I have a problem. I was like, are you talking about like an oil change on your brain? And they're like, yes, that thing. So they're like, we don't know what health insurance is. We don't know who is the behavioral health office. And can I just walk in there and tell them that I want to talk? I was like, it's a good question. I will find.
Yeah, does Central District Health or anything like that? Did you want to add anything, Melissa?
Yeah, I was gonna also say, it got me thinking about a student had an idea last year that she presented to the council, and that was the youth, having an opportunity for youth and adult members of the community to just have more regular conversations. And then the issue was, well, when, because nobody can ever squeeze in anything, but like there is the idea of a lunchtime town hall. That's what, yeah. So like maybe if we could create youth town halls where sometimes people just need to talk and have a space to just like share and talk and be, grapple with different issues. But sometimes just the process of learning how to have really good conversations and feeling like you're gaining something from that and being heard, but also learning how to listen and just having more dialogue in the community.
Do you think like a Doing Democracy platform for youth would work?
I think a Doing
like
Democracy
that.
platform for youth, and possibly if we could do them at like lunchtime or something so that it's part of their we offered like for a year, if a student took it on, like if the youth council took it on, but like some sort of town hall where kids have agency. And they just feel like they're being heard and processing all of these different thoughts. So that's almost like maintenance and preventative, because they're just like, oh, I get to be heard, and I have, and it doesn't have to like be side of them all the time. So just like creating dialogue, and it's just been stifled in a way, like across the country. So just being able to start that process.
Well, we talked about mental health. I just want to talk about health too. So talking about health, I know I hear from my son. Obviously, we have a lot of athletes in this community. We have a lot of people that are mountain biking, they're hiking, and they're doing things like that. And then we also have a lot of people that are really, really bored and they don't have anything to do. And so then there's drinking, and then there's vaping, and then there's drugs, and there's all those kinds of things. We talk a lot about at the city level, of protecting our parks as third spaces and with video cameras and trying to keep kids accountable. And our skate park gets a little rowdy and we got some inappropriate behavior over there. Do you guys anything you want to add or comment on that I can take back to staff? Any concerns? When I see staff, I work with the police department. I work closely with Garrett, the fire department. We, of course, work regionally as well. So do you have any major concerns or things you're hearing or anything we can look into and find out if it's a spoof for you or rumors, anything like that?
So the Planet Youth, like their model is actually based on this like Icelandic prevention model. So they were asking the kids questions specifically about substance use and stuff. And then, so I think they're trying to kind of get into that. And I know that before, like I was on the wellness committee at the school for a while, and we had like some anti-vape programs and stuff like that. It was interesting in in some of the conversations I've been in, like, it felt like there's a lot of people think we just have like a normal problem of that, like normal, like what's happening in other communities. And then there's some people that think there's like a lot more of it. And I feel like we don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It'd be interesting to hear what our police department thought.
Well, our children have the luxury of watching people on vacation every day here. So we're trying to raise our children in a vacation destination where it's always a party. So if we're not careful, they replicate that in their lives. So that's something you need to understand as a parent. And I think there is a disconnect with parents. There's more punishment versus understanding or open conversation about the issues. And I think specifically for Scott and I's girls, they're seniors this year. I think our senior class right now has such a close-knit just responsibility for each other that I think they may engage in those activities, but it's in a safe manner. So,
yeah,
2 cents.
Okay. Yeah.
I worked in the inner city for a long time.
Yeah, I'm from Miami.
All Saints up here on top.
Yeah, I went to
180 degrees from where I worked. So
yeah,
it was. I see it. Obviously, I just dropped my son off at the skate park, and there's, young adults that are smoking, vaping, doing inappropriateness in the parking lot, and of course, I'm that guy. I'm going to roll down the window and say, "Really? You want to take this somewhere else?" It just kind of comes down to parenting and kind of educating your kids on what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Obviously, there's shenanigans that are happening over there, and I don't know. I feel I have kind of an open relationship with my kids to be able to have that open door policy. Come tell me what you saw or what's going on. I'm not shy of being vocal whatsoever. I'll call you out on it. So, to kind of get back to that topic, like, where is the barometer, right? I mean, where is it at in comparison to other cities of this demographics? It's really hard to say.
Well, I mean, if you want to know, I guess you could always just like anonymously survey high schoolers, right?
Well, and that's what Planet Youth is actually trying to do, like, so that the model's based on data.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, there's the thing with reporting. For me, like, I personally think it kind of goes back to transportation. The difference between here and like, I've lived in more urban areas, and in more urban areas, we would get up to these shenanigans and then walk home. But here, you know, that's my biggest concern with a lot of that is getting it, you know, kids who live down in Donley or kids who live out,
Driving.
you know, driving. And so, you know, I think we all try to make, I think most of the parents I know are like, call me anytime. I will give you a ride, and it's not, you know, it's not, but that's, so it's the problem presents itself in different ways. I mean, we don't have to worry maybe about certain drugs as much, but then we have to worry more about the driving. So just being unresponsive. But I also think that having other things to do, because that's the other thing. So there was a bowling alley and a movie theater here when I was a kid. And now and I didn't live here full time, but I came up here quite a bit. And I went to the movie theater. I went to the bowling alley. Those were things to do and places to hang out. And then I went to high school in Boise, and we would just go to the BSU sub building. We weren't drinking in the BSU sub because there was, you know, there were police officers and like BSU people there. But we would hang out there for a long time, and then maybe we would all be like, oh, where are we going? Let's go to this person's house. But like, we had a place, there were things to do, places to be. And I do feel like the amount of drinking is fueled somewhat by the lack of other things to do in the evening.
Yeah, idle hands, right?
Sounds like a rec center could take care of.
Yeah.
A bar,
Yes.
bar in the rec center?
Well, a youth outreach program. You could have a place to like have the kids where they could do their little youth councils, you know, call it a community center or whatever. You could have, I mean, it's just like, there's no.
Did we collect Mark's email address? I just want to send him the pros plan, and I want to highlight the rec center for you guys so you guys can see the pitch. We were a couple of years off from $11 million, but you know, because we just spent it next door at the library.
I've heard about it.
We'll see what happens.
It's down like by where they do Woodstock, right? Like
Yeah,
down
they're
by-
talking about, yes, exactly. Well, I don't want to take up much more of your time, but I do, I want to open it up to anything else you want to add. And B, if you think that there's another topic that we're missing that we need to maybe have another conversation about. A lot of good ideas came out, and I just want to comment on the fact that economic development came up a lot for me. One, how do we attract bowling alleys, hangout places? How do we attract Uber drivers and Lyft drivers? How do we think about what can we do to build those types of businesses into our economic development strategy? And I think that's something we can talk about at the summit too, the Valley County Economic Summit, which is coming up November 6th. And if you're interested, you can sign up for that. That's not me, that's West Central Mountains Economic Development Council. So feel free to sign up for that as well. But is there anything else you guys want to mention or just put in the
Two things
circle?
that I had dangling in the ether that I think came up at the beginning was like apprenticeship or workforce development. I know the state is working on making dollars explode out of the wazoo for that for youth. Some of it oriented towards high school graduates going directly into community college, but some of it is allocated for like going into the trades.
Yeah.
Trades heavy community. So I'm wondering if there's like a pathway that we can bit by bit piece together so that kids don't feel necessarily that college in academic form is the only way, but trades are an option and they can generate the money that you need to come back and stay in the community at this point.
Can I just say how super cool and groovy it was last year when we saw those senior kids who got their universal CDLs. They did it in school. They came out with jobs, making $60,000 to $70,000 a year with jobs, like before graduation. Like super, super, super cool. I got chills again. I mean, I love a return to the trade. I think that's really cool. So apprenticeships, awesome.
And then the second one they asked for was just like a celebration of young people festival that didn't allow alcohol in, so that it could literally be local kids drag their parents, they all hang out, they dunk the mayor in a dunk tank. They were like, there's like the 4th of July fest, but that's not for us. We want that, but make it like October or May so that no one from outside is invited. And I was like, okay. Very
That's difficult legally, but possible, I suppose.
Yeah.
If you did it in a private setting. Yeah, okay, so Youth Fest 2024, right?
It could even be, they thought about the little ski hill, but it could also be like downtown, just where they have
Blocked
the
off.
farmer's market, but you
Yeah.
just block it off, but it's not like, obviously anyone is welcome, but you do it at a time of year when it's less likely that you're gonna have a lot of tourists.
That's
I
cool.
wanted to be the center of
But,
attention.
yeah.
And I was like,
Okay.
that's fair.
And like
Valid.
bring in bands, have
Yeah.
food trucks and.
So I always say that if you want kids to come, kids have to plan it.
Yeah, I totally.
Because they want to pick the music,
Yeah.
they want to pick the food. Nobody wants their mom picking the food. So if they really want that, then I would find 3 people to spearhead it, and then we can connect them with chamber and do all the things and donate the space from the city and do all that. It's possible.
Okay.
It's a
Yeah,
2-year.
We need kids to decide. No, we could do it faster than that. But
So your youth council, do you have the stats on that? Like how many members do you have? What are their grades? What are their?
Oh, I think we had like 15 applications this year so far, and they're all still coming.
Yeah.
And most of them are freshmen and sophomores this year. Last year, we
These are
had
seniors.
5 or 10, and they were mostly seniors.
Okay.
And they established the bylaws. And so the one thing that we struggle with, like everybody, is finding after school time so that they can legally vote on things that they need to tell the city council, that kind of stuff. But we just meet in Mrs. Coriel's room on Mondays at lunch. And right now they're reaching back out to local restaurants about the local discount program for lunchtime discount meals so that they can get an $8 burrito instead of a $20 burrito. And then they'll roll into either Firewise, looking at stuff at their family's property and then putting together materials on that, or whatever next project they're inspired by. They got pretty fired up about mental health on Monday, so that might take them in some kind of.
it'd be really cool to take some of these ideas once we collate them and take them back and present them to the kids and see what they're interested in for their youth council goals, right? And so there's a leadership capacity involved in youth council as well. And one of the things I think we learned last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that seniors are hard because they leave. And so it's really great if we can inspire freshmen, sophomore, juniors to get involved. We want seniors too, but we find they got really, really busy towards the end of the year, and it was really difficult for them to stay on top of everything. But also then they leave and you have to refill those positions. So if you know younger kids and you want to inspire them to get involved, I think as long as we keep the open idea that they get to set the parameters for what they're talking about, then it
have to go
really
like,
cool.
That's not legal, or
Yeah,
we don't.
you're the buzz, literally the buzz kill. Yes.
Year, once, last year, and they felt really official and I felt like they got a lot of stuff done when we would come to this building.
Yeah, it's a really cool experience. And then they present at least the goals a couple times a year to the city council. And they actually bring their ideas in front of the council, which is neat. And then I want to integrate this year, including a representative or 2, because they're better in pairs, from the council to speak, or from their council to speak to our city council during the retreat. Because the cool part about the retreat in January is not only is it an official public meeting and it's open to the public, but it's in a casual setting. There's no podiums. It's very chill. They usually do it at like Spring Mountain Ranch Clubhouse. And there's like food and they can kind of talk to them and have a real dialogue. And the council showed a real interest in, and I think we're very receptive when the kids came and talked to them directly. So that was very cool. Any other thoughts on this topic or ideas for future topics you'd love to hear from, other than an outline of a new rec center? I get that one a lot.
All right.
No? Well, I appreciate you guys being here. The next one coming up is on seniors. And by seniors, I don't mean kids seniors. We're going to be talking about the elderly community in October and what resources they need. Should we sign you up?
Yeah.
Sign you up. Yeah, so if you know anybody who needs assistance or help with that, we'll be reaching out directly to the community center and inviting them. Similar goals. how can we fit in? If you guys don't mind and you have the time, take these sheets home with you and review them and see what we're missing, what is different. Shoot me an email anytime or give me a call and tell me what you'd like to see on there. We're going to continue to build it. We learned a lot tonight about the different opportunities out there. If you're interested in youth council, Meredith is your contact. Did you bring the applications down at all?
We did.
So if any of you have kids who might be interested, she's got her application. And thanks. And you're free to go unless you want to talk to me about construction or.
So my senior dad has solved the transportation problem. He's just been hitchhiking and he's been doing great.
Well, I'm ready to listen or answer any questions you guys have.
Here to share it.
I'm gonna